Trevor Jordan, and this is my disaster case study for EMA3310 Risk Management for the fall 2017 semester. The disaster I chose to depict for my study was the West Fertilizer Company explosion that happened on April 17th, 2013 in West Texas. First, we'll give you a summary of what happened. 15 people were killed in the explosion and 260 additional people were injured. The explosion was a result from fertilizer-grade ammonium nitrate catching fire in the plant. There was a crater that was left that was 93 feet in diameter and 10 feet deep, and was reported at a 2.1 magnitude tremor. Also, from 7 miles away, windows were shattered in a radius from the explosion. Now a little bit about the facility. The facility was built in 1961 on the location that it sits on in West Texas. At the time, it was grandfathered in and did not have to have a sprinkler system or a fire alarm system for the complex. The construction was just kind of a basic construction, concrete floors with wood walls and a plywood roof with asphalt shingles. Also, the substances that were in the facility were not manufactured there, but they were only stored there. Now, the community surrounding the West Fertilizer plant, the city of West has a population of 2,800 people at the time of the explosion. The nursing home was built in 1972, and that was only 500 feet away and occupied 130 people. The apartment complex and the nearest residence were 370 feet away from the West Fertilizer Company, and the apartment complex housed 22 units in it. The middle school was 200 feet away, and the high school was approximately 500 feet away. And if at the time of the explosion the schools were in session, 665 students would have been affected by the blast. Now we're going to discuss some of the fines and the non-compliances that the West Fertilizer Company had over the years. And this has all pretty much come to light when everybody started talking together after the explosion. One of the ones that they found was that OSHA hadn't actually done an inspection of the West Fertilizer Company since 1985, and before that there was a few issues to where $30 in fines were given to them. In 2006, the EPA issued fines for them not having a risk management plan that met federal standards. Also in 2006, the Texas Commission of Environmental Quality, or TCEQ, they were called out to investigate an odor that came from the fertilizer company, and they found out that the fertilizer company had actually operated for 2 years without air quality permit, and a fine was issued for that. In 2011, fines were issued by the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, or PHMSA, for various violations for mislabeling, for improper transportation, and for a lack of security. As for the disaster, the timeline events that happened on April 17th, 2013, at 7:29 p.m., the West Volunteer Fire Department was dispatched to a fire at the West Fertilizer Company. The first responders that were on scene were actually police, who then went to the park across the way. There was 150 feet away to evacuate the park. At 7:37 p.m., the first West Volunteer Fire Department engine arrived on scene. At 7:50 p.m., the explosion occurred that created the disaster. Initially, right after the explosion, triage was set up at the high school football field, which was a quarter mile away. At 8:15 p.m., mutual aid from neighboring communities arrived on scene, and just 12 out of the 15 deceased were actually emergency responders. Now, as those affected by the disaster, 60 to 80 homes were completely destroyed by the explosion. 50 to 75 homes suffered pretty extensive damage. 50 apartment units were completely destroyed. and areas of the nursing home sustained damage and collapse, and along with significant damage to the West Independent, middle, and high schools. And right here we have an actual video. It's a 3-minute video that shows a simulated 3D model of the fertilizer plant and the affected areas of the blast, along with actual photographs of the events that correlate with this 3D model. And again, sorry for the lack of audio for this video, but I thought it was so interesting that I want to share this with you guys. So there it shows that the explosion occurred right there at the holding facility for the ammonium nitrate. And now they're actually showing you kind of like a scale and color coordination on kind of what was affected with the hot zone, the warm zone, and the cool zone of the affected blast. Now the red ones, in case you didn't read beforehand, the red areas are buildings that were 100% destroyed. Yellow, partial destruction, and blue has zero effect from the blast. And so you can see right there the apartment complex and some homes right there. That whole wing, 1.5 wings of the nursing home were also destroyed with the collapse and stuff like that. And actually, the apartment complex, I believe 2 people died in that apartment complex. And of course, the entire plant was just leveled, being at the center of the explosion. All right, next I'd like to talk about the emergency management response and recovery and the efforts that were put forth for that. So on April 19th, 2013, an emergency declaration was issued for the explosion in West Texas. Some of the agencies that responded to that were, but aren't limited to, the ATF, the Urban Search and Rescue Texas Task Force 1 and 2. FEMA also was deployed on the 20th of April to conduct preliminary damage reports for claims. And then various Texas emergency and incident management teams were deployed to West Texas. I think there was DPS, Department of Homeland Security, Texas Rangers were all there to also investigate to see if this was also a criminal matter or not. And now moving forward, kind of what are some lessons that we've learned? One thing that the West Volunteer Fire Department did not do was they did not conduct a walkthrough or pre-incident plan of the facility that housed the hazardous materials. And that's always just a good practice for anybody that is in emergency management or in emergency response, is to have a pre-plan, especially of highly hazardous stuff that is in your communities. Also, emergency response personnel should be versed in incident command protocols for all major incidents. Again, whenever the fire department arrived on scene, there wasn't an incident command per se right at the start, and there was some overwork that was done. And then also, regardless of a grandfather clause, I think that anything that is a facility that holds hazardous materials, I mean, they should have a fire alarm and sprinkler systems in their facilities. And here are references that we used to obtain this information for this slideshow. And thank you guys so much for reviewing this.